Hello, 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 and welcome to another one line of code. What a groovy song. That was crazy. That was something, is something. Yeah. Anyway, hi, welcome in. Happy Friday to you. I hope you're doing well. Hello, hello, another one line of code. Yes. Today is Friday, which means it's Community Day. And Community Day on this stream means that we will share recipes for really tasty food and talk about everything other than software development. No. It means that we all get to talk about software and technology and cool stuff and fun stuff as you would like to talk about it. I will be paying much more attention to chat. And if you are interested in doing so, feel free to join any voice channel in Discord, type !waiting into chat, and it will let me know that you are waiting in chat, and I will pull you into the voice channel. If you're not comfortable having your voice come over on stream, you can still participate in Community Day simply by just talking. We are looking out over some city in New Zealand. In Auckland, New Zealand, June of this year. Man, it's nice. Looks very nice. What is that in the far, far distance? Can you see that? Can I zoom in? Can you see? Oh, you can't probably because it's behind me. Can you see? Dang, second shot. And look at where it is. It's like right on top of the now playing. Why aren't you showing the actual thing that is now playing? Oh dear, I'm gonna have to fix that. But do you see somewhere around here? There's like this, it kind of looks like a nuclear power plant. Something. Or just a really big tree. It's probably the world tree. That's in New Zealand, right? Anyway, very nice shooting, bit gamey. 60 points. How much bonus? 8 bonus points. You scored a 4 out of 60. I think I confused it when I added the bonus points thing. We'll figure that out someday. Okay, so yes. For now, what I normally do. Ooh, and Peter's already ready. What I normally do is do work on the bot, but I'm in the middle of some stuff for work. So I'm going to keep doing that. But if you're ready, Peter, I am pulling you in 3, 2, 1. Just like that.
Hey, hello.
Yes, beautiful.
Talking.
Thank you for mic checking.
Yep.
You are good.
Using words to talk. Hello.
So I'm going to go to my desktop screen so you can see what I was working on. See all the names of these. Oh, no, you don't. Start virtual camera. Oh yeah, except that you'd be watching the stream anyway. Man, I gotta get
I'm
used
watching
to
the stream, man. Yeah. I'm lazy.
That's okay. Absolutely okay.
Tests, huh?
Tests. Fact. Also fact. So I'm debugging a test to figure out why it is failing, why it's not giving me the expected output. And it's because I am not actually arranging it correctly.
Yeah.
I need the field mapping to have at least one transformation. Import field. Okay. I think I just fixed it. Yes.
Is it
I fixed it.
success? All right,
It was.
commit. I'm gonna force you. No,
I remember.
yeah.
I remember this from last time I was doing test on stream.
You gotta commit. You gotta get my style, which is like you have a file that's 50 lines long and there's 20 commits on it somehow. And people think you're like, wow, Peter's committed. About half the commits the team has. It's like, yeah, but they're committing every 3 days. I'm committing every 10 minutes. But it is good to like, and I mean this, I am serious semi, because whenever you're stable and you find something that's wrong and you want to fix it, you just fix it, commit it, only that part, and then you have you can always undo the
I agree
rest.
with this though. It's not that crazy in my opinion.
12 minutes test, no problem. I know you're debugging it.
Wait, what? Oh yeah.
12-minute test, or no big deal, but it was debugged. It was debugged. I know what happened. You
That's
had the
funny.
debugger, but it was a 12-minute test. It could be concerning for some.
Thank you for pointing it out. So yeah, so I wrote, prompted by Tyron. I'm gonna say that I was encouraged by Tyron. He was probably just like saying it in passing as a half joke, but I took it as encouragement to go ahead and write tests to make this go faster. So I spent yesterday doing that.
All right.
So since I have tests showing on the screen, what do you think of writing a test for my setup for everything? Like, I think you're the one that gave me the pattern of essentially if I have a standard thing that happens across all the tests, create a test context, excuse me, and then have everything inherit from test context.
It's useful until it's not, but it's just I just think of it in terms of duplicated code. If you're going to duplicate the code everywhere, make a method to eliminate the duplication. And I think that is the benefit. It will eliminate the duplication. But there will be times where you need to, I guess, .data file there is a static thing that has a lot of stuff on it.
Right. So that's this thing here. So I have a CSV that I just copy and pasted from my CSV, and then the same CSV as a JSON.
Nice.
And then I create the import data file that the entire library depends on.
Okay. All right, yeah. And it's just it's only a thing if you need to change. Like, I think in that one test you had to add a transformation, which you did not need to do elsewhere. So you didn't put it in the shared.
Right. Instead, I just cloned it and then added it. So I cloned the existing thing and then added it.
That's fine.
Do you have a suggestion on a different way?
No, it's fine. I don't know enough. Like I'd have to work with like all your tests to tell you what my opinion is. But like, I'm just trying to state the goal, which is just, you know, if you have a lot of duplication, then your tests are hard to change when that time comes.
Right.
And if tests don't need to change, then maybe you can duplicate forever.
You know what? You're absolutely right, because I haven't written the test for the combine rule. I've only written 2 tests for the combine, or for the copy rule, and all mapping rules, everything that inherits from mapping rule base, is going to need a version that has a transform that doesn't have any actual value transformations, and a transform. Oh. Okay. Anyway, so I'm gonna have to do this. That plus this on multiple tests.
And maybe you can copy paste a bunch, and then, like, again, it depends on how many of these tests, how much are they going to change. So like, is it even all that bad that you're duplicating the code? But yeah, I will also say I'm always impressed by your multi-select skills, because I have I've never mastered I've never mastered multi-select. Yeah.
No field transform should return null. Should return null. And TBD. All right, pulling you in 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
Hi. That's so much
Ooh.
easier to see when it's in chat like that. Oh. Are you here because you have opinions, or are you here to talk about something else?
And I have nothing, so attack the conversation.
Attack.
I have opinions on testing, but I think my opinions are always overridden by the fact that if you are confident that it is testing what you want it to test, and you're confident in everything, it doesn't matter what other people think of tests. Because again, at the end of the day, tests are intended to help you be confident in the behavior of the application.
Absolutely. Like right now, the main reason that I went to writing test is I honestly don't know how I'm going to make combined rules to work. So like a combined rule is where you take multiple fields and combine them together and transform each of the fields before combining them together. So it's an interpolation operation on the result of 2 different Canhorn or Mr. Anhorn, thank you so much for the sub. But that's something that I'll figure it as we go.
Now he appears. Where was he when I was doing Palumi and struggling this morning?
Yeah, seriously. I love that he's got your Robotnik there next to the .NET Cat.
Thank Canny for that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, these are more akin to integration tests, right, than they are unit tests necessarily. Because I always think on the topic of the data stuff, unit tests, if you're copying stuff between, if you're creating unit tests and copying stuff in between, or creating like base classes and stuff, I always feel that runs the risk of becoming too complicated. And the unit test from a behavioral standpoint should be validating a behavior without data. You've got real. One of the risks I got taught was that putting realistic data in tests as well kind of starts getting users aligning to like how do I put it?
You get people used to the format of the data as it appears in all of your tests, as opposed to it just being random data every time.
Yeah,
no specific format.
Yeah, I anonymize data. I don't make it look like the real data.
Yeah, gotcha.
I
and I do agree with that. It's just this was the easiest way to get up and running with this.
No, I'm like I said, I'm not. I'm just saying the way I've kind of evolved to do my testing is like I consider this more like because you are testing. Here's a big data set. Does it do the mapping and stuff? It seems more. Whereas the rules themselves. Well, you do have unit tests in there, don't you?
I do. So like, this one is kind of, I guess, an integration test where I'm checking that the entire pipeline of, we have this, like, you know what the UI looks like. You pick the field and then you pick the the source field, and then you configure transformations on that. So this is just ensuring that you've configured all of those transformations. You've configured what fields are going to be put into this destination field, and you run the mapping on it, and it does what we expect. But I do have ones for the individual transformation operations, which is why I don't have to worry about. I showed the data instead of operation, but which is why I don't have to worry about, when I created the transformation here or down here, I could pick any transformation, value transformation operation, and if that part fails, I have a unit test for that. So the unit test for that individual operation would be the thing that I fix,
Yeah.
not this one.
Nice.
I'm still here. I have so many opinions,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. Canadian Anhorn says, "How did it go? Should I watch the stream and write up what you should have done?" I say.
Canadian horn. That's what you
Yeah. The A is used twice. I know.
Yeah, playing with Pulumi and stuff, doing deployment stuff is that is a whole different challenge.
Yep.
But that was a lot of this morning. I did get it. I was actually before the stream. I was tinkering on that when I should be working and getting the deployment. I got the pulling from Docker Hub working, so it pulled the image and it did a deployment of some form. So some success, but then back to the drawing board to try and get ingress and stuff working. So bit by bit, struggle by struggle.
Wait, ingress working? What?
I'm getting. I was using Pulumi to deploy to a Kubernetes cluster locally.
Bombs mentioned.
And by the way, there is a waiting room. We have a waiting room.
Oh,
It's gonna get lively in here.
except
We're all
that he
hopped up
did
on Halloween
push
candy.
exclamation point waiting. That'll let me know easier. Otherwise, I won't notice.
Yellow.
Always DFlux. He ignores the command.
Purple.
What? There's a command.
Yeah, exclamation point waiting.
Ah, you see, I'm for commands. If someone gives me the authority to give out commands, I should use it. Really.
Well, you can type it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Was it? What did you say? It was join or was it?
Exclamation point waiting.
Waiting.
There it is.
Hey.
Hey, that was very quick service. You predicted it even before I was actually waiting. You already knew. You subconsciously tuned in.
Yes. So hi, welcome in.
Hey. I just saw the time. I was like, oh, I bet 119 is doing his community stream. I better join in. I see you guys are discussing Pulumi, which is a very interesting piece of technology. That I dabbled with just minimally. When I was last looked into it, but I never got around to using it.
I don't know anything about Pulumi. That's why I was letting TBD respond to that.
I wasn't. Also, we were talking about tests. I didn't mean to divert onto Pulumi, by the way.
No, that's absolutely okay. It's community day. We don't
Yeah.
have to talk about my work.
Yeah. Pulumi was. I do want to do infrastructure as code. I definitely feel that it's the right way to deploy something like Liquid Sky. It's one.
I agree.
Way. But it's its own. There's a reason why DevOps is a discipline, right? Mm-hmm. And why we've identified it as needing that specialization. And it's a whole lot more stuff to learn. And I feel that done incorrectly, I could leave myself open to all sorts of challenges, because the number of times I'm going to show keys and stuff on stream as I stream it, that's going to be a nightmare.
This is actually a fairly interesting topic for 119, because I agree with TBD here that pretty much if you're going to be deploying anything to either AWS or Azure, deployment will. Damn it. Deploying was the word you just used to describe it? It's infrastructure as code. Is that what you just called it as? Yeah. Is a preferable route in my mind. And you're saying, well, I've never used this. So you deployed AWS, right? Most of the stuff you're doing right now for is AWS. And so you imagine you go in and you're doing a clickathon inside AWS to everything set up, right? And then you deploy using GitHub Actions. Is that how it goes right
Azure
now?
Azure DevOps, but yeah.
That's right, Azure DevOps. So have you ever considered switching that out for a infrastructure as as code approach.
Not currently, because of all of the stuff that I have to do with the job. So there isn't really time to restructure anything.
Yep.
It's
when I
all
was working at Shaw, when I was working previously, we just didn't have time to switch over to deployment as code. We had built up an infrastructure, basically saying to the DevOps. It was really weird because half of the company didn't want us doing that anyway, and another department in the company really wanted us to do it. So it was kind of weird, but it does seem more preferential because you could simply just declare, "Hey, I need a new database," or "Hey, I need another instance of this."
right.
And TBD, obviously, your freaking .NET Aspire is the Azure opinionated version of for deployment. Obviously, you're thinking more on the lines of, I want to be able to deploy to Google, AWS, or Azure, right? And so that's why you're going the Pulumi route.
Well, anyway, keep going.
Well, and so it's interesting because when I did look at Pulumi, it did to me seem like a relatively just like a port to C# to please the .NET devs. It didn't seem like they were like, you know what I mean? They were a very useful tool, and I think it's the best one out there right now. But it didn't seem like there was another better option or that much competition in that area. And so we were looking at, and I forget the name of it, one that's written in Java. Oh man, I wish I knew the name. That was a lot more. I think also Pulumi has a port for, or was based off of, that seemed to have more options and more was more dynamic.
The only other Java
they have
website
language. Like they don't care about your language. Obviously, they have to support your language, but they're not like Terraform, which requires
That's
you
right.
write
That's the
in
one.
the most cursed HCL.
Terraform is what I was thinking.
Right. Terraform was the one I was asked to use, and I was like, no.
Our DevOps people use Terraform on AWS, and every one of them was like, I wish we didn't use Terraform.
Yeah, I'm reading Sean's post, and yes, all right, it's my turn. I'm opinionated.
You mean Naples?
I've managed our Terraform infrastructure, and I've had to survive all of the weirdness. So let me just state for the record, we don't have that complicated an infrastructure, but we also intentionally keep it simple. So we only spin up the cloud infrastructure. We do not spin up most of our applications. We deploy the code that we write from elsewhere. So that's an important distinction. I'm not sure who does what, but that's number one. Number two is I'll just say the biggest benefit for all these IAC, but specifically Terraform, is it freezes and locks your infrastructure into place. And by the way, the reason I said no to the multi-cloud thing is because they are physically different things you're going to be spinning up if you're deploying. Basically, if you need to go from Amazon to Azure, it's not a push button. But anyway, so like it freezes your infrastructure and provides you safety. Man, if you have ever, if you click around the portal, that's the old way we've done it. We've done it recently. If you click around in the portal and then someone says, I need a second production region, or I need to make this change to all our production regions, which happens, and it's like a 15-step button clicking exercise, and it's production. And if you screw it up, I don't know if you can recover. So that's the biggest thing for me is safety, because when you run Terraform plan, it says you're about to change this, and by the way, this change is going to replace your database, and it actually will threaten to do that, and you have to be very careful. But you can always work through it. You can always plan and know that you're not going to accidentally replace your infrastructure in production in the cloud. So that's the big thing, and I do agree that I'm still reading Napalm's post about Pulumi, but yeah, everything I've heard about it is, man, I wish I could write an if statement in Terraform, which you basically can't, and I wish I could write a for loop in Terraform, which you basically can't, and it's crazy. It's completely crazy.
Well, and so TBD, you're looking into that Terraform. Can you do a for loop or if? I'm pretty sure you can, right?
You can do a count. Yeah.
In Pulumi?
In Pulumi, because it's all TypeScript based, yeah, all C# based or whatever language. There's I think there's 5 languages supported in Pulumi.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's coding you can do.
But yeah, that does seem like live coding brought up what I still haven't quite wrapped my head around with these type of technology, which is, does like, do they carry like a whole like database migration tool set inside them? Where they're like, hey, copy this database, create a new one, put the same data.
Nah. They might be able to. We don't. I prefer to think of that as application code, but honestly, a lot of our SQL stuff predated to the Terraform, so I'm sure they got a connection string and ran SSMS. I'm sure that's what they did originally. We also have Cosmos DB. We definitely run
sexy stuff.
Well, it's really anyway expensive stuff.
Full support by EF as of .NET 9.
It's what?
That they officially made it part of. Well, I think they've already done it, but in the .NET 9 what's new docs, they mentioned Cosmos DB being fully supported by EF.
I don't know why. Stop. Everyone needs to stop using Cosmos because it's a hyper-scaling database. Use Azure SQL. Be old and boring, and save yourself.
I think for small projects, it's cheaper.
Yeah, but who cares about small projects? Like,
I mean, I do.
Like, run SQL. I don't know. I guess I see your point. If you want to just have a free tier, but like, don't use it as a database. Once you start, like, do a key value store, I guess, like where you just store documents and retrieve documents and nothing else.
Yeah.
It's so expensive to run a query, and yes, we index, and
yeah, I use it. I use it for like my DJ stuff where we keep like leads, but when it goes past a certain date, we just remove it from that data set because this is like upcoming events, and we pull it like into a JSON file that's just stored in OneDrive.
Yeah.
And that way we've never like it never bills us ever. And that's partly because we don't have more than like 1,000 leads at any time.
By the way, we're ignoring chat. There's so much discussion.
Responding.
Sean posted shameless plug and then corrected the URL below. And then Pulumi with Azure for the past year, and it's brilliant deploying on container apps and such. That's Fad Shaloub. I'm probably
interesting. That's very interesting with the container apps approach, right? Because that sort of does ignore, in my mind, I think I have maybe a disagreement with everyone. I think I'm the exception. I think all three of you would disagree with me. But in my mind, the best way to use the cloud is to go to the cloud and say, here's my code, how can I best run this? And that basically involves using cloud-specific implementations like Azure Functions, things like Cosmos DB, things like what's it, freaking Azure Service Bus, and AWS has the same thing with Lambda, as opposed to using containerized, where you just say, well, here's a network thing, here's a 50 containers, you figure. That seems to me like not only much more work, but much more cost. But I think I'm in the minority. I think everyone tells me I'm wrong.
Just in life.
Functions, Azure Functions, Lambda Functions, however you call it, lead more towards the microservices style, right? And from
not necessarily.
Well, yeah, because if you've got an application, composing an application through Azure Functions or Lambda is a little bit more complicated than deploying an application that has just API endpoints, right?
No, I'd say the opposite. I would say putting like 5 Docker containers with different apps that communicate amongst each other is far more complicated than just putting a monolith app into Azure Functions, which you can easily do.
So from a deployment perspective, you want to change. I get you change one thing. That function does a single thing, or it has a single purpose.
Right.
It's not overly complicated. It interacts with the database. From some of my apprehension to that sort of stuff is purely from the fact that I also work in an organization where DevOps is twice removed from me, right? So any deployment, any change, I don't actually have access to do any of that. So configuring those things and setting those things up all requires someone else to be doing it.
And that's why we agree with the whole. That's why I particularly like the .NET Aspire and Pulumi, because you can obviously describe that in code, right? I need an Azure Functions application. It's going to host 50 APIs, and it's going to talk to this database.
Yeah. But then, so I suppose in that case, the infrastructure as code takes on even more meaning, because you're deploying your application isn't just the functions, it's the entire infrastructure of deploying the functions. So instead of having a VM with a set of services on it that does a specific thing, you're now distributing that across all those functions, and it requires that infrastructure deployment to.
Well, no, I mean, it's just a functions app. There's no real infrastructure. That's what and I was saying earlier, where I haven't actually got the chance to use it yet because it's so easy not to use it. You just go there, create new functions app, and you're pretty much done. Maybe add some little configuration for authentication. But other than that, there's not too much to configure. It's just right click. I mean, it's the same as doing right click. You go in Visual Studio, right click, hit publish, and then select the Azure function, hit next, and you're done.
I hate that. I think all deployment functions should be removed from Visual Studio.
Well, obviously, from historical, it's the same. It's you're just doing the exact same thing, but in a YAML file on GitHub or whatever, right? It's not like there's that much to it, which is why I think it's superior than it is to doing containerized application, because containerized application, you do have to set up that infrastructure. You do have to worry about how these are going to communicate, and there's a whole bunch of other questions in terms of performance and like the cluster, right? You got to have a K8 cluster and how that's hosted, and then how much you're reserving and all this sort of stuff. Whereas,
I have a pop quiz. For both of y'all, don't look at the screen because it'll hint too much. In an in-unit or X-unit library, assert equals has 2 parameters. Which one's expected and which one's actual? Which one do you put first?
I don't
Expected actual.
Okay.
I believe
there's a difference between a senior developer and a junior. I don't know.
But also, I think X-unit, it just says left right because it has been such a land of confusion in unit, and they just say left doesn't equal right and don't assume. Oh, it is expected actual. I'm wrong. There is one framework that's just it's left right, whatever. We don't know what you meant because everyone gets it wrong. So
I normally stick a message in there.
I was going to say, Snabble asked that. I still don't understand why Aspire. You have to expand on that a little bit, but I think it's awesome. But maybe expand and let me know what you don't understand about it.
By the way, Fuel mentioned closure, very advanced, very scary that you know that word. That was a while back. Let me see.
Fluent assertions.
Pod says they deployed MongoDB on container apps just to save money from Cosmos DB. That's
smart. That's smart. MongoDB is very easy to deploy, and again, fully supported by EF, so it's nice and easy.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, Napalm says DynamoDB better in AWS. Don't at me though. We're not speaking to him. We're gonna just acknowledge he said that.
No, I think that's one of the areas where I think the cloud people, whether it's AWS, Google, or any of the other ones, Azure, that's where their money making bread and butter is. It's all in the whole database game, right? And that's why it's such a contentious topic, because it doesn't really matter which way you go. There's all sorts of costs involved. So, like what they was explaining earlier with like putting a Dockerized image and put the database inside a Dockerized image, that's a really, really smart way to get out of the cloud bread and butter, right? That's essentially a get out of jail free card, because that's basically how AWS and Azure makes the money to pay the bills. It's in the database game. But the other stuff with, like, for instance, Lambda or Azure Functions, the free tiers are so massive that they don't. I don't suspect that they make a ton of money from it. They also, there's other things, obviously, like they make a lot of money from the whole network infrastructure side of things, with like having a VPN and stuff.
That's a good time to point out that there are a lot of opinions being thrown around. So just take the information that we are giving as opinions and do your research to verify, validate, etc. See if you agree with them.
Because that's one thing I will say. I'm very opinionated, and that's why I like the opinionated Aspire.net, because it really does. Well, it does. That's a product built for me. I have an opinionated view on cloud technology, and now there's a tool that's also opinionated that sort of agrees with me, and so I'm like, oh, this is really good. You know.
Logged. Snubble, most recent message, I guess, because I missed a whole bunch. Said the way I see Aspire is that it's good if you're into microservices, but I don't do or know microservices, so I don't see what it gives. Probably a flaw in me with respect to Aspire.
Yeah, I guess I've never thought to use Aspire with microservices. Obviously, it is useful in that regard. You can spin up a bunch of little things, but as a whole, it works just fine with monolith applications. And I think what tbdgamer was mentioning earlier about being thrice or twice removed from the .NET, the dev ops teams, it basically sidesteps that issue and says, I've expressed what I need in code, please just give me a subscription in Azure or whatever the AWS equivalent would be. Give me a spot there, run this, and it will go ahead and create the relevant things we need. We need 3 databases, we need 2 pieces of applications, right? The what's it called, web apps, there it is, sorry. You need 2 web apps and so on and so on. And we have this configuration file, and it's going to import the relevant things with our identity platform, and all that kind of stuff can be handled in the code. And so you don't have to worry about necessarily clicking around in Azure or clicking around in AWS to set up the relevant things to get that all basically going. But it's one of the things that Napalm Code points out right there is a little bit of a black magic. I don't think it is that much black magic. It's just, it is still, even to this day, relatively new. Like Will was mentioning, LiveCode was mentioning earlier with, what's that one that everyone hates using? Forgot the name of it already again. I always forget. That's one piece. Yeah, Terraform. I always forget that name immediately. Terraform. Everyone hates it because it was like the first major attempt, and so all the problems of it, all the the underlying why this is a complex issue, why we have basically human beings, their whole career is to basically solve this problem, is because of how complex it is. And now we're moving away from the complexity side of things into a more of a uniform side of things, which is the sort of the black magic part of it. But it ultimately, all the documentation is there for the commands it runs, right? If you go to the AZ documentation, you could essentially create a .NET Aspire on your own by simply having a thing that converts what you want into AZ commands, or the Azure CLI interface commands, which is all it's doing, is just running CLI commands. But the added configuration stuff where we're setting up things like the identity provider, the certain limits of how big something can be or how small, all that kind of stuff is relatively black magic, because you're just basically handing over a JSON file, and it has to meet the spec of the cloud provider that can change, and that's obviously a little bit of magic there. But that's not the magic of Aspire, that's the magic of the cloud provider, adding.
You guys in Discord are so lucky that you don't have to hear stream sometimes.
I don't even know what jaw is. I see it in the chat room.
It's it sounds like Rush. I think it's Rush. Maybe it's AC/DC. I don't know, but it's really loud. That's what it is. It's a hairband scream.
Oh, that one. Got it.
Yeah. It's the who. Oh, yeah. Duh.
So before I try and catch up with chat, how are the tests going? And we can argue about your tests.
I'm letting Copilot write them for me. So
Really?
right now the 3 tests that I'm thinking of are, well, I mean, I'm like describing it and thinking about what maybe should happen.
Okay.
So these should fail because none of this is implemented yet. But yeah, the three different tests per mapping rule are: if there are no field transformations, then that means that we're not actually mapping. It's the same as an ignore a field. If there are field transformations but no value transformations on those fields, then we should just output whatever, in this case, the combination of the 2 fields is based off of the rule detail, which is going to look just like an interpolation. And what else? Oh, and then when there are transformations, we do the transformations.
So you're adding tests and this already exists. Which scenarios already exist in your
everything that I've written up until now? This is brand new, so
okay.
Starting from here, but all of the other tests, everything was already implemented and I was just verifying functionality. So all of the value transformations, mapping, calculation, regular expressions.
By the way, Napalm's in chat, and I feel like I understand his problems more than most people. I think I'm so curious about why people do service location, but I've deployed apps with Octopus Deploy for the last like 10 years. So I don't like, I have built into every deployment, I have a configuration update. Like, you know, you go to app settings and you say the URL for service A is blah, and I'm setting it here in app settings. And when you need to find the URL for service A, you go to blah. You look it up in the config, and you know, it's production, dev, different, and you set all that up. And I've just done that forever, and so I've never had these problems with service location. So I am curious what you end up with on the Kubernetes side. I will also say, if you want to get fancy on the Kubernetes side, you can register a service for your app. Register a service. I don't know if Aspire will do it. And the service keeps a list of endpoints. And the point of that is to say, if you want to talk to your thing, you can access either the service, which is load balanced, or query the service for a list of its endpoints, and then get the direct line to one of your pods. Man, Kubernetes talk. What a great time.
Yeah. Up until now, I use console. Okay. But I'm only using console from the perspective. It's not really used too much as service discovery, but I use my Kafka. I put my Kafka configuration in the key value store of console, so that all my topics are held onto there. And then from the services that I have right now don't directly talk to each other. They're all through Kafka anyway, so they don't need to do any. They don't have to have knowledge of each other.
They just need to know to access Kafka. Yep.
Yeah, so Kafka's the only one that needs to resolve, which is nice. But
and everything's pushing into it, I assume. Yeah.
Yeah, so the services do their thing, push the data out to Kafka, then there's consumers pulling that data from Kafka and doing what they need to do. So, which works pretty well.
Fuel made a joke. Clouds were gathering in 2010. It was ominous that the clouds were gathering in 2010. Gotcha.
I was actually an early user of Octopus. Like back when it was free, when they first started launching it, I picked it up very early on, and it was before it actually fully launched, and got that deploying to AWS.
This is one of those things where I've never even heard of it. I probably have read about it, but I've never,
Yeah, Octopus deploys was just a platform that you could configure your environments, you could configure all the settings, you could set up all the deployments and stuff, and get it to actually, and it had agents and it pushed to the machines. So it worked really well when you had actual machines, right?
Windows machines on IIS, it was perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So
Interesting.
it was very nice.
My nose is going crazy.
Yeah. For the record, DFlux, it was Octopus is just, yeah, it just deploys our stuff.
Well, I
you
probably
can
got
do
to the
this
part of the article you just highlighted when it said IIS, and then that's when I tuned out, so I'm not using that.
Well, it was good at that back in
Yes,
the day.
I imagine.
What
I
was
mean-
the alternative? It was brutal.
Right. No, I mean, I used IIS when I was a long time ago for a whole bunch of stuff, but I know, obviously we've since moved on, right? I say since moved on. I just left an employer who still uses IIS religiously to this day.
Yeah,
Still a lot of them.
Hey, yeah, at my company, we manage a few, what is it, app service apps, and they're running on Windows, and maybe we can swap to Linux, but like, it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, if it's in framework, it doesn't matter, I guess. But in .NET Core, you have the lighter, faster Kestrel, which not that it matters that much, but there is an effect, right? Which is
Oh yeah. So, I'm trying to be flexible. Like, like I'm trying not to poo-poo. I fully agree with you. There's no reason to have an IIS app, but if you've already have it, then there's an obvious reason to have it, which is inertia, and that's okay.
Not all companies can just move on from what they have as well. I mean, there's still.
I disagree with that. The companies can't move on from what they have. Companies, you might say, like companies, for instance, don't have the capital anymore, or they're a failing business model, and then therefore they can't move. Maybe you have something there, but as a whole, I think it's the newer the technology is, the easier it's become to do what we do, right? Which is both a good thing and a bad thing, because we get paid less as a result. But ultimately, deploying something to Azure in .NET, ever since .NET 3.5, I would say, is like literally 3 clicks and you can have a website up. You know what I mean? It's the stock website, right? It's so blisteringly easy to do the more modern stuff. And I know there's companies that have older stuff, but it's onus on the developers that are there to refocus on the technology that's uniform, relevant. We've moved from a place, in my mind, of ununiformity in terms of there's like, go back 10 years, there's all sorts of different technologies for all sorts of different things. Roll forward to now, a lot of that stuff has gone away because we're much more uniform in our approach to technology. Things like building a site is a lot more uniform these days, and consequently the stuff that no longer works for a really good reason. And constantly refocusing the technology stack to what is uniform with the industry that I'm in is important. And so inside that, there's certain industries where it's like useful to not change anything. And yes, I see it in those industries, but for most of business, like 90% of business, it really does move with the prevailing industry market sentiment, which is make things quicker, easier, faster, better. And I think it's important to stay with that, right? To not find excuses and reasons to basically not comply with the uniformity and create something custom that then can't be refactored or can't be maintained, because you're just basically creating problems for yourself down the road.
I gotcha. I will also say we're way more productive than we used to be, right? Am I?
Yeah.
I maybe not. Are we? All right, pop quiz, everyone. Are you more productive than than the equivalent person 10, 20 years ago?
We have more responsibilities, and we have to get more things done as a developer nowadays, I think.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah, I certainly, with the advent of things like Copilot, like one of the tickets I was given was to refactor some VB.NET stuff, which again, we hadn't done a ton of stuff with VB.NET, but I was able to converse with a piece of technology, ChatGPT. I was able to understand a lot more about VB.NET a lot quicker than I ever could without it. And so stuff like that, like one line was just saying, we have more responsibility now, partly because we have a better tool set now. That's why we're given the responsibility. It's not so much an expectation as a result of the tooling that we have. I would say.
And another thing is, oh man, it's kind of hard because like you're also saying relative to the equivalent from back then. So I would say it's about equal, even though we have more responsibility, we have more tools, like DFlux was saying, that make it easier for us to do those things. And it's seemingly getting more done, but more needs to be done. So it's proportionate to the amount of work that should be getting done. That makes sense.
Oh, it makes sense. Oh, it makes sense. DFlux Pod says CNF is one of the best things that ever happened, honestly, and I don't know what CNF is. So
I don't know what CNF is, but yeah, I'm gonna agree with him.
I think I agree, and if it's a swear or something like that I just agreed to, like, so be it.
It sounds like some like blue team, white team thing or something. CNF.
Cloud Native Foundation?
Cloud Native? Yeah, Cloud Native Foundation.
I don't know. Tell us, Pod. Tell us. You're the one. And see, Fuel says give back Rad Tools. Fuel, I'm an Access developer. It was a good time. They had
Cloud Native
tables. Cloud Native Foundation. All right, Fuel. Rad Tools. Access had tables, queries, forms, reports, and of course VBA to tie it all together and make pretty applications, and I could knock those things out. I did one towards the end of my Access career. In 4 hours, I built a working app, and it felt great. And I shipped it, and they never complained again. And I hope they don't use it anymore. That was a long time ago. But Rad Tools, man. All right, what's up?
Yeah, he agreed with you. It's the Cloud Native. But there is a big disagreement. What is Cloud Native? But I agree completely in terms of when I think of Cloud Native, I'm thinking of platform as a service, right? Where, again, you hand in your code and the platform determines how that code is going to run, as opposed to you dictating how you want the code to run, which is like infrastructure as a service, which is a lot more expensive and time-consuming in my mind. And it also involves things like there's a big gray area, which is Dockerized infrastructure or is it platform? And to me, it's like sort of both, and that's why it falls out of the platform as a service, and why I have preference against it.
Huh. It depends on which container service you use. Because I actually know the Azure ones, and like, yeah, Kubernetes, you can access the nodes that are running these Docker containers, but also you shouldn't, so that gets a little fuzzy. But things like container apps, I have been told you cannot access anything except your container, and obviously they would choose to isolate it as such. All right, they're lighting up the chat. Rational Rose, Napalm's giving us horror. The industry has advanced. There you go. Rational Rose, thankfully, is not the way anymore. COBOL, the original app we were replacing is probably 10x more productive than what we use. False. Fuel. I don't believe that. You know what? You might be right. How about that? I'm gonna waffle. All those things that make your mind go blank, I'm not even gonna read them aloud. Rational Rose is still in use? No way. I don't even know what real time is, and I never want to know. So, Napalm says Cube Control is obscured and you hate it in container apps. I could see that, I guess. I just never, I want to be able to just say, give me logs, show me a page on Azure Portal that tells me if I'm using all the RAM or whatever. Otherwise, I don't really want to know. I don't need, hopefully Napalm, I don't need any of the things that I need for my Kubernetes clusters. The old COBOL environment was a rad tool, all integrated with the DB, aka text file, and everything. Built-in debugger that you could launch from the app without an IDE. Well, I mean, okay. I'll let it go. I'll let it go. I've never done COBOL dev except for a assignment in college, and I'm not going to talk about it. And spaces matter, and it was crazy then, and it predated Google and or my use of Google, and it was really hard. But I'll allow it. But bring back Microsoft Access if y'all want to. Go ahead. Just better not VBA anymore. Oh, Napalm saying Kubernetes errors bleed through and you have no way to troubleshoot. You should have logs. And you should have restart. Like Napalm, if your thing is going unhealthy and restarting, you should be able to see that. But I have not used ACA in truth.
Yeah, Findle says cloud native equals Azure Functions only can run locally. You can definitely run Azure Functions locally. In fact, they have a part of their Azure Arc or HCI. You can actually on-premise part of the Azure Cloud, which includes Azure Functions and Cosmos DB. That's another sidestep to the issue. If you have Cosmos DB, you can run on-prem, which is an interesting approach. But then still manage it inside of Azure, which is very interesting.
I think this is a good therapy session because everyone's saying what they hate and what clearly they have run into in truth in production. So FOD, I'm crying with you about log analytics. It is so brutal. It is so brutal. Anyway.
Yeah, I think in part of .NET 9 and hopefully more so in .NET 10 as well, they've included a bunch of stuff now, a little bit more along the lines of like the Google Analytics stuff, which is like what is being clicked on, pages are being viewed for Blazor Server, which I think is really important because right now there's no statistics on... There's statistics on things like load time and stuff, but there's no statistics on what pages are being used and what is happening, which is like, again, the Azure Application Insights is really lackluster when it comes to a lot of that stuff.
It is. ACA is container apps of Azure.
Container of Azure.
Yeah. Make it sound fancy. I wanted to say container apps, and then I realized it has an A at the beginning.
I've never got around to actually... so you had the Azure App Service, which was like the precursor version, right? And they've since now created this new one called the Azure Container Apps. Yeah. But to me, I haven't quite worked out the difference.
I can literally tell you.
Go ahead.
App Service was the original. It let you run it ran Windows and IIS, and you would deploy using a Kudu interface or something, whatever. The point is you deploy to it, and your app runs on IIS and Windows, and it works great. And then they've introduced a lot of variants that run Linux and containers on Linux and a lot of other languages, and it doesn't totally make sense anymore. But the original selling point of App Service is Windows IIS hosting that you don't see. That's pretty much the summary.
And so containers is just not IIS, but the same thing?
Oh, I don't think it. I think they're totally separate. So I would say container apps is the hot new thing that Napalm's struggling with, as you can see from the comments. Like, has a lot of anger about ACA. And I have none because I haven't used it, but it's the hot new thing, and you just deploy a container there, and it doesn't let you see where it's running, basically. And it actually has a lot of the Kubernetes, like I saw they run Kata, which we run ourselves, but they run it. So like you can scale up and down. So if you get like 1 million messages roll in, you can look at your message queue and scale up every 5 minutes or whatever. Pretty exciting. Anyway, that's CADA. That's container apps.
Interesting.
Fuel, I don't like that Kafka cluster is 10 VMs. It must be a multiple of 3. I'm very nervous about y'all's cluster now, Fuel. 10 VMs feels incorrect, but maybe I'm just thinking in old clustering.
Yeah, with
There
the
we
whole,
go.
with the whole, this maybe you can answer slightly. With the whole VMs and the Dockerization, right? In order for one Docker image to talk to another Docker image, you must then set up a networking device, right? And then add the network stuff. All of this is cost, right? That's my understanding. Is there's a lot of cost involved with setting up all these different things. Is that correct?
You mean yourself? Like locally? Or...
No. On Azure, like so right now I have like an application I want to put to Azure but I want to Dockerize it, right?
So how do you want to run it? Start up an Ubuntu thing?
Everything is a Dockerized image. So we have like say 3 or 4 Dockerized images. They all do stuff, and that's the app.
Okay. Yeah, that gets into if you're deploying Azure Container Apps, which Napalm can tell you about it and I can't. You can say these 4 apps, this one gets 1/10 of a core, this one gets 1/10 of the core, this one gets 2 cores, this one gets 1/10 of a core. And instead of paying for a bunch of Windows servers for each one, or a big Windows server for all of them, you're paying for chunks, which has its own problems. So,
right, so basically,
but
if
you save money. You should save money.
Let's say you have 1/10 of a core and 1/10 of a core and like 2 cores for this, right? You have to reserve those cores, or you can say, whilst it's not running, don't build me anything.
I don't know. I assume you mean running all the time. Right. I know there are ways to have it like spin up and run jobs and then spin down, but I don't know what those are.
Yeah, it's all interesting and complex stuff, you know?
Yep. I'm reading all the chat.
I'm reading too. I got fallen way behind. But I wrote tests.
Later, Napalm.
Yeah, Napalm went to go study some more.
Be productive with his life, perhaps. Unlike me. No, it's all good. See, Fuel, this is the wisdom. Fuel says eventually we migrated to AIVEN, whoever they are, that managed the cluster for us, and what a relief that was. Finally, I had a full night's sleep. I cannot emphasize enough. This is my #1 cloud benefit that I love. Things that have data in them that you can lose potentially, or things that like Azure SQL that you can overload, or just a SQL server that you can overload, you absolutely don't want to host it yourself. You want to pay the cloud vendor to do that so that you can have a full night's sleep. I have not had problems with most of our services that we manage because we have tried as much as possible to push it onto various cloud things, and like even like third-party cloud things. Like, please get us out of the business of managing this thing. It scares me. And I mean, at some point, like, you're just scared to do anything. So you don't want to be scared to do literally anything. You want to have some expertise. But man, I do not want to be an expert at Elastic. And I've learned way too much about Elasticsearch over the last many years.
Well, that's another very interesting one. What you say you don't. That's one of the ones that was compatible with OpenAI's platform, right? So if you wanted to create your own version of internal company OpenAI thing, you could use Elasticsearch with it, right? As one of their data agents, whatever the hell it's called.
The way I explain Elastic is that if you go to an e-commerce website and you do a search, of course that's running on Elastic, but pretty much anyone can do that. But Elastic also powers what they call faceted search, which is the most specific thing. They have all the facets on the left that match your search term. And this is such a specific thing, but you can watch it the next time you're shopping. Like, let's say they have 5 sizes for t-shirts. Let's just say. But if you search for red t-shirt, they might have only extra small and small because they ran out. That's always how it goes, by the way. As a guy who is blessed with a normal body size, if you ever see like in stock, it's gonna be extra small. So, but anyway, Elastic powers those queries. Like, it does advanced search queries. Of course, it can do the like sounds like, or I don't know, all the similarity queries. But like, just think of it as more powerful search. That's really what it is. And then, of course, yeah, everything can be used with OpenAI or whatever, but just don't think of it in terms of AI.
Or do.
Yep, I see one posted a welcome. Yeah, welcome pod. And yeah.
So I've been semi-checked out of the conversation because I know so little about doing deployments using Terraform, Pulumi, or even using Docker, containers, anything. That is all of my stuff is hosted as straightforward gets.
Well, let's talk about tests if we've squeezed the sweet turnip juice.
There's one thing that the one line does that I never do that I should be doing every single time.
Which is what?
Writing tests.
This is the first time I've been doing it on these apps.
Yes.
Since starting with them. I was encouraged by Tyron on Wednesday's stream to write tests, because what I was doing is writing UI so that I could test the functionality as opposed to just testing the functionality without worrying about the UI.
I recall you learning about tests years ago.
Oh yeah, and Peter was one of the main people that taught me how to write tests.
And I always wanted to join you, but it's simply too far ahead at that time of my learning. So not that I couldn't have, but that I just didn't quite get around to it, you know?
Hey, and by the way, I love these tests. I love your arrange, act, assert, because they really like you. I never have outgrown it. It's if some people are like, but I don't want to write it, and that's fine. Whatever, as long as I can see those 3 sections. And by the way, for small tests, if there's an arrange and there's not really an act, I just put arrange plus act at the top, because it's kind of covering 2 sections. Because you can get everything done in one line, like a lot of one, yeah. Yeah, but this is also a weird test. I don't endorse that test, but it probably got.
And that's what I was asking at the very beginning was, this is just my sanity check that all of my sample data that I'm using for every test exists.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I will. I disapprove. What did you got? Are we doing test driven
yes,
design?
And now I'm at the TDD part. Yeah.
So let's see, what are we doing? So
the one that I want to work on is this rule for when we do a combine rule. So yeah, I kind of want to show it because that's the other thing. When you write tests, you don't really get to see the intended scenario.
Well, that's a goal.
I guess.
And this
well,
is,
I mean,
by the
as
way,
far as
why I love
presenting it to
integration.
people on a stream.
Well, show us just from the perspective of the test, because this is really kind of the user code. Oh no, FOD. I love TDD. You're already.
I'm not really into it. Just saying. Like, my biggest issue is that I feel like I'm testing all the wrong things. And that I test way too many things.
Don't hate. Okay, good. Hey, that's an important.
Well, you have Peter on your side.
Yeah, so now you've got one who's not in your team. But okay, so this is the whole point of test-driven design. And if this is too high level of an integration test, then you will have a mental collapse because you will be unable to do the design right here.
Right.
So let's talk in terms of what are you trying to do? You're trying to combine two fields and then run a transform after those two fields, which also have their own transforms.
Right. And so, like, the main reason that I wanted to show is because pictures are worth more than what I say, and I use a lot of words. But in short, since the application is taking an Excel workbook or spreadsheet and a CSV or a CSV file and mapping the column values to other from the imported data to the class, the combine rule is combine different columns of the same row while transforming their data into the output value.
Okay. And you said while transforming, and I heard you say earlier, transform each of them individually and then transform them together.
Right.
Transform the combined. FOD, you don't know who you're talking to. I've done a coding dojo.
I know all the words.
I know every word. I know all of these subtle, keep your tests not dry but moist. You know, I know what that means. It means a little wet, just a little wet. And also you can say,
what even does the acronym mean? Nothing.
Wait, our dry means don't repeat. So wet is obviously the opposite. And
We enjoy
I think
typing.
we write every there is a backronym someone invented called we write everything twice.
Oh yeah.
Before you try. So there's that one. I know all the words. All right, so you're showing me.
Yeah. So this is a transformation, for example.
Okay.
So during that transformation, you can choose whether you're going to copy the values over, which is only one field, and then you transform that one field, or you combine fields. And that one is going to have pick a field, do the transforms for that field, pick another field, do the transform for that field, and then define how you combine them together.
Okay. So maybe the test isn't the right spot. How do you want this to appear on the UI? And maybe you don't know, which is part of the problem. But let's sit here on the UI.
That was why I was writing tests first. Because I don't know. Like when I just now described it to you, that was the UI. I click here and it pulls up the same type of window, except that instead of just transformations, it's you pick a field first and then you define all the transformations for it. So one field can have multiple transformations, and then you click on a plus sign or something and it gives you another tab, maybe. So it's like in a tab format, I guess. You pick the next field, transformations if any, and then down here, how do you combine all of those fields together? The result of all of those transformations together.
Okay. So let me ask it this way. Your first field is prime cont up top. Or sample date. I see it at the top. So assuming your first field is sample date, if you have transforms listed on sample date above, do you want those same transforms?
No.
When you're doing combined stuff?
No. I mean, like, if it is a combine by itself, then yes. But the output, so, oh man, that is a consideration to make. So let's say you transform sample date from collection date.
Maybe you just want to get the month.
Yeah, like you just get the month then. You're giving me more transformation options. But yeah. Because
well, if you're not using it yet, you don't need it. But
I guess because this will always be in English, computer is expected to be in month, day, year format. Dates are going to output like this. Anyway, let's say that it's going to be the first two characters of the value as a string. So we get the month, and we use that for the samp date field.
Okay.
If we're down here and we're like sample program, it depends on the month. Then we would have to calculate the month again and not be able to reuse like samp date, the current output for samp date.
So you need all of the transforms for a single field twice, left side, right side. And then you need to figure out a third method of transforming the combined left side, right side.
Right.
Sounds like a lot of UI.
I mean, like for this one, again, I think it's just going to look like, because like this is even just a rough sketch, but I think it's going to look like this, except be tabs, where the first thing in the tab is the field that you're trying to combine. So one tab for, let's say that the anal meth no. This one.
You're not allowed to say that without laughing. Like you have to say analysis. Analysis.
I have been. But it got pointed out in chat, so why not? Yeah. And thank you so much for the follow. It was because I said anal meth no, isn't it? So let's say that the analysis method number is a combination of the analyte and the I don't know, the lab sample ID. Completely not how it's put together, but let's say it is. Then when I go into this screen, I would have the whatever I said first as a tab. I don't know.
Well, this is something I can't help you with. The UI.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do UI right now.
Well, but I think honestly, test-driven development's all well and good, but I think your UI should push your design.
Right, which is what I was doing at first, but then I got stuck on combine until I just now described it to you, and then I'm like, I kind of like the tab thing for the different fields. Yeah, and then another text field.
Tab, like from my perspective, tab is like another way to put a second page of stuff.
Right.
But it's all the same to me. Like, I don't know. I guess you can go back to this test and it's kind of working in the middle of your app. It's, not low level and it's not the UI. It's kind of between those two. But if it helps you figure it out, so we could write, so this is the aspect of test-driven design. Are you willing to try it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let's go to your code. So you've described it. It's 2 transformations chunks. And where are the transforms that you did elsewhere?
Those are here. So because to set it up, I need a mapping rule, but the mapping rule doesn't care about the fields that it's mapping. So the thing that does is this wrapper called a field mapping.
Okay.
So the field mapping can have multiple what? It has a mapping rule, and it has multiple field transformations.
Oh, okay. So I see it. You have actually started to write this design out.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I was trying to assume you hadn't written any, and I was wrong.
Right, because everything comes from this base class, and since I already have copy working, and a combine is just a copy with multiple fields.
Okay, so let's read through your test setup and act part.
Okay, so this got set up originally. If it wasn't set up at the beginning of the test, it sets it up. Prepare data file.
Yep.
And again, it's just reading it's actually taken the JSON version, but it would read a CSV file, turn it into a data set with one table, and create all of these things called field descriptor, imported record field descriptor for each of the columns. So lab sample ID gets one of these. That gets added to the object too. And every single one of them also gets, at least for this, for the purposes of the test, everything gets an initialized field mapping, even though they don't have any fields assigned to them, nor transformations or anything like that.
And this is where it gets a little bit icky, because you might, what in your UI, do you actually have to explicitly set up a field mapping if you were stepping through this in your UI?
Right. So right now, the way that it works is when I drag and drop a file, it reads it into a data set and then creates the field. It's the same way this does, creates the imported field records, but it gives them all. So I said it gives them all an empty field mapping, but this one is actually trying to map it to the original field names, using the original field names.
Okay.
And then I populate the value sets, which only happens in the UI when you're trying to show a preview, for example. So if I'm in here, I choose this, all of my preview values come from that value set. And then, I just add it to the import table. Sorry, I add that as a new row to the imported table. So this is kind of mocking the Excel data reader.
By the way, there are 4 people in our voice chat, but let's walk through. I want to walk through the the test thing, because we were still on the first line of it, and then try and talk our way through it.
So I am picking 2 fields that I know exist in my test data. And then I am getting the field mapping for the first field.
For the first one.
Only, because I only need one field mapping to get the rule. And so we're essentially saying that we are trying to map the value for our output lab sample ID. And we're getting that from both the lab sample ID and the client sample ID inputs. So that's what these two are.
So is that going to be real? That anyway, let's keep going. So import field.
And so why am I skipping? I don't know why I'm skipping.
I saw you write it.
Yeah. So this is just the data field itself. Okay. And then the actual row from the imported table, I just grab the first row from the table.
Sure.
And then these are my input values, because my expected values, my imported values, my expected value output is going to be the interpolation of the first value space, second value, both substringed to the first 2 characters. with the word interpolated at the end. So that's what the rule detail is that should generate this with the 2 substring operations on those 2 fields, which I guess I skipped over this. So I'm creating 2 new field transformations and adding them to the field mapping object. Both of them are substring. Where even did I define it? Oh yeah, both of them are going to be substring with a starting index of 0, max length of 2. And they both get that mapping transformation. Then we do the actual transform with the mapping rule, and then that gives us our result.
Okay. And I will say, I would. How many lines is your arrange at this point? I don't think it's that many. I don't think it's like, I think you can literally collapse about 2/3 of them.
Okay.
So, like, I don't think it actually is. Just keep that in mind. Most of us will be disgusted by the number of lines, but like line 75, 76, even 74. Well, you don't really want to regenerate your data file every time, but like 75, 76, you can then line those.
Yeah, I definitely
variables.
didn't.
You don't have
this.
to. Don't just leave it. And the same with the 83, 84. I think it's more important with 83, 84. Even expected output. I think it's kind of clear. Oh, you did it. Oh, you madman.
Just one of them. There's only one thing. I just didn't feel like writing imported data objects data file, but since Copilot is the one writing most of these.
Got it. So just keep that in mind, because most of us have like this rule, like, oh, you're not supposed to have that many lines of setup. And there is a good bit of advice, like you've cut most of the setup out into that helper static property thing. I guess it's import data objects data file. So you've done that. It's just even, Anyway,
like you're saying, essentially this thingy here could be its own method. This could be its own method, and then this could just be a method that says get value.
I see. I don't know even exactly how.
Value.
You could just keep in mind, most of us will be disgusted. I guess you have no one to look at it, but it's not real. Like just line 72, 73, 80, 81. Even 84, you could probably inline. No, you couldn't. You actually need. So the core part, what makes this test different, is like line 84, line, I guess 76, 77. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter. It's pretty good. I love your testing style. Because I hope I influence
holding on to every word you were saying. I'm like, how can I improve this?
I mean, you could make it more exactly like I would do it. How about that? Is that better?
Yes.
You know, people have called me crazy before. So just know maybe it's not better. Yeah.
So like this import row, I'm always getting the first row. So let's extract that into a method. Say get import row. Take that get import row and put it in. Oh, I pinned it to make it easier. It should be here. You know what your problem is? I love that.
It really is fun. I'm trying to like avoid telling him like, hey, I want this. And this is something in all pull requests also. Like I try and watch myself because I have the natural inclination like, oh, but if you made what I really want is I want a single method with a ton of optional parameters. I want you to set up your data with a single, like all of it. It's crazy, right? But all of it, I want you to set up with a single operation. Or maybe you set it up. What I've started doing is I've written these methods that say, I guess it would be get data table or get data file or create data file. And then I would have like 2 or 3 lines, which you have here, modifying it. But it's no, honestly, don't stop listening to me. Don't, I'm not even here. Because it's just how I
stop
do
listening to you.
You need to. It's for the best.
You're not going to convince me to.
Oh
yeah, builders
how about
would be a cool
build?
way. Yeah, it was just like for me, like since I don't do this very often as it is, I didn't want to spend a lot of time doing tests. I wanted to get to the implementation part because I keep saying this, but this part of the product needed to be delivered, or I wanted to have delivered by the beginning of October. And here I am a month later and I'm still working on it.
Got it. Yep.
But I still do love hearing about more seasoned information from more seasoned people that have done this and have these patterns that work really well.
And does it? I am serious that people call me crazy because you're more receptive so far, even if you don't do it, you know, in the real world, even if you end up going about your day, like you're more receptive. Usually it's, well, you know how that goes on a team.
Mm-hmm.
Bot has activated my trap card. He said, how about test data builders? So FOD.
And I place this card face down.
Yeah, I actually don't know what that means exactly. I don't know what a trap card is, but I know this is how you use it. So this is how you use it. He's activated it. But FOD, if people are recommending test builders, it's because they're either writing Java or they haven't understood why test data builders were invented. They were invented because there were no optional parameters. The language features were not there. It's kind of like you'll hear Java programmers talk about closures a lot. They used to talk about closures, and it was like, why do they keep using that word? And it turns out they meant delegates. But like they didn't have them, or it was really hard or something. So they made this giant object hierarchy to store a delegate, and it was bad. But like, anyway, so test data builders is like this very fancy method of building out exactly what you did with one static object. Import data objects dot data file. Anyway, President not sure. Thank you. They would talk about them a lot like they were holy. And they would talk about them like they're these really heavy things, and in C# they're just delegates. Anyway, so test data builders I'm not into. I think if you look at the .NET like host builder, the thing that runs at the app startup, that's using the builder pattern not for tests. So that's a very valid use of the pattern, the builder pattern. But like, you don't need the builder pattern for your tests. And I have very complicated integration tests. Do you have an example? So FOD, you'd have to search for blogs from like 15 years ago. Where people cared. I'll search for object mothers. C# object mothers, because this is basically the pattern that. Oh, I don't. Okay. All right, this is all I got. FOD. Got a Stack Overflow question, but 1.1's using an object mother, and what that means is there's no optional parameters, there's no configuration of this data file thing. He just gets it and then customizes it after he gets it, and it's fine. It's fine. Bod, don't... Well, maybe it is, but I haven't seen Laravel. You will have to show me a Laravel PHP example. I don't know anything about that, but I do think you can get most of the benefit, all of the benefit from optional parameters in a method call. I do believe that. And I have very complex test setups that I've done. And anyway, so. Oh, man. There are 4 of us, and I feel like if the conversation is dying, it's all of our faults. And I did hear the last time I said that, DFlux, he unmuted and then muted again in quiet.
I actually have never muted it. I never have muted it.
Oh, okay.
Fake news. Fake news.
I'm confidently wrong, like always.
I'm doing an interesting thing. Well, not really interesting. I'm playing around with Blazor WebAssembly's offline storage of data. I'm trying this Blazor indexed DB thing. It looks like it's slightly undeveloped, but it's still, it's .NET 7 is latest time they updated it last year. I'm playing with it as opposed to using SQLite on the client side.
Nice.
Which is somewhat interesting.
Yeah. 1.1, by the way, I'm now nervous that you've lost your working tests and they're dead forever.
Oh, no.
So you will need to run tests when you're stable, when you can compile.
I will never be stable. You will never find me. Ooh, I have an idea. What was the name of that method? Okay, import field. Have a version of this. It is int.
I'm gonna
And of course, I'm assuming
parts.
that I will never ever try to skip more columns than I have.
So, question on import data objects.
Yes.
That is a supporting class to do what?
It holds all of the sample data to begin with. So this import data file is the thing that gets generated when I drag and drop a file into the UI. So it's pretty much simulating that process. Since I'm not testing that, I just want that import data file. And so that's done by having a CSV that I could parse if I needed to, or the JSON version of the data, and a few helper helper methods for preparing the rest of the import data, so that I already have import record field descriptors, which are all of the columns. I have all of them with some mapping so that it shows up with copy when I open the side drawer layout. And then all of the field descriptors have sample data so that when I'm ready to start testing things like previewing the data, all of the data, I could do that.
The sample data is not so even though it looks, because you just copied the data in, it's not mimicking the actual behavior.
Right.
I'm always careful about trying to build classes that support tests, because then they become part of. So if you hold to your tests should be treated exactly like your production code. They also need to be maintained, and you don't want to introduce fragility. Is as you add more tests around this,
Mhm.
do you feel you run the risk of breaking one test because you try to support another test as you change this for the test you're doing?
So far, no. No, I think that once this was set in stone for me until I started wanting to, or not wanting to, until I was encouraged to reduce the amount of code in the arrange step, for example. And an easy way to do that is to have methods instead of a logic in here, especially since I do this a lot. Give me the field mappings, give me any number of import fields that I can play with. Create a new X rule, test X rule. All of those things could be standardized how I do them. And once they're set in stone.
All right, run it while we talk.
Okay.
Run them all.
I get the idea. I definitely agree with the moving things like the first clone value data, because that's exposing like the internals of the import data objects data structure, and whereas you really don't care about, you care about getting a field.
Exactly. Yep. And like you said, it is only for yeah, so nothing else failed. Only these two are failing because I haven't made the logic for them.
So what differs here to when you actually run the code, the real code?
I think I was asking him earlier, and from my understanding, like the field mappings, he has added field mappings for every field.
Which happens in my sample UI.
But it's not necessarily what people do in production. They'll ignore half the fields or whatever.
Right. So if I'm thinking about this as a library and someone else using it, if they don't set it up to where their import, well, that's a lie. That's a lie, because part of the library is also the UI aspect. So for the Blazor component library, if you use that with this, then it will do I'll give you all of the field mappings defaulted to copy, but with no actual field selected, so it'll just ignore them. No imported, no imported field selected. But if you're using only the library itself and you're building your UI around it and getting all of these functions for free, then it's doing all of the setup of the data file. Gosh, that's a hard question to answer, TBD.
From my perspective, if I was writing this now, I would have an I import file interface or something like that, right? And I would have a mock in here, or I would create a fake instance, and your import data objects would be a fake instance of that. So it would just represent the same thing, because it seems like these functions, like saying get import row, get whatever, these are functions that would exist on the incoming data source anyway.
Data file, yeah.
So it seems like that you're starting to move that behavior in there. You probably have that same behavior when you're importing a real file versus that. So for me, I'd probably create a fake instance that did all this, but it had the same API as the one that was being used, and then you can just create an instance of your fake and do it that way. And then you're testing not only well, it's testing this still, but you are actually
so there is no actual logic in the import data file. There it is. Okay.
Did I hear that? So in the production app, you open this form builder and you set up a new type of import. And I mean, as a user, right? Like as a user, they open.
So there are
your
two
app.
users for this. Okay, so the app user, because one user is the developer using the library, another user is the one for the app. So yes, tell me about that one.
So I'm going to tell you about it so you can say yes or no. Just butt in
Okay.
when it's. So the app user uses this. They drag a file in or whatever,
Or select.
and then it creates this out, like, it does what you have done. Yeah, it has this screen open, and then they say copy, ignore, whatever, transform various
that's
fields.
not showing yet. Now it is.
Does it create a field mapper automatically?
It does it on the import process. So
Okay.
after they drop the file, that's when it turns it from Excel or CSV into dataset with a data table. Then for each data table, because an Excel workbook could have multiple worksheets, for example, this one. And so you would pick which worksheet essentially you're working from.
Okay.
So for each worksheet, it creates a set of field descriptors, which are all of the columns and their data types and their values, essentially. So turning the data table into a columnar format. And the field mappings where everything is defaulted to copy with no field selected, unless it finds a matching field name. Then it pre-populates the field name with copy.
Okay.
With no transformations.
Ooh.
Or interpolate. Why do you have interpolate? Oh, because we were playing around with it before. No. Why do you have interpolate?
So these tests actually are more finer grained than I had originally thought, because I think my concept of this integration test would be, you don't really want an actual file, but like you would be running the import method. It would be under the hood, like doing crazy transforms. And then it would be returning a data set. What eventually happens to the data once it becomes a data set?
Oh, good question. You do get a data table back as a result of the, like, I need a button to actually do it, but for right now, what this sample application does is for every field that you're doing this, it will cache the output that you would get for all values of that field. So site ID has a whole bunch of different ones. And so if I apply a transformation to site ID and I get the previews here, that's cached so that when I push the final map button, I'm just going into that cache and saying for this row, replace all of the output values for that class. Or actually, again, it'll be a data table. So for each column in data table, create a new row and then grab that row's values transformed and do that for every single one of these. And then you can do, if you wanted to go from there, if it wasn't just to display a transformed data table, you could also continue the actual step that we're going to do, which is transform that data table into a list of whatever your target type is, and then do whatever you want with that target type. So for us, it'll be a list of ChemRec records.
Okay. So if this is done Peter's style integration test, which by the way, TBD, I am pro integration test, believe it. But don't worry, I promote enlightened integrations tests, which are flexible, not brittle. All the magical good things. The only thing they can't promise to be is fast. I would seriously like emulate the UI, add transformations, click the whatever button, the import button, and then inspect the table in SQL as a output.
Right, but that's assuming that it's going to go to SQL. In this case, it could just be a C# object that you are using in a page.
Wow,
or it could go to a different data store.
So why do we talk about validating all of what this does on the UI I don't even know. I want to say something really quick to Fod. He
Yeah.
showed me the Laravel docs for something they call factories. And
Laravel.
yeah,
Oh my.
yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it before. Anyway, it looks like they have a looks like their code shows something that you can get in .NET. No one I've seen except for us have ever done it. It uses the library Bogus and the library Auto Bogus. And you could set up a similar thing where your test data is bogus, like they're saying. And you can also have it auto fill it in for you.
Yeah, I've heard of
Like, hey, I need a valid US phone number. Oh, auto fixture from President, not sure. Anyway, it depends. Yeah, it's fine, I guess.
So, I mean, you're
do...
absolutely right. None of these have to be structured anything, as TBD was saying very early on. Nothing needs to be structured like the data we're expecting to see. This could be any input object and targeting any output object.
Yeah.
As long as we do have columns and rows. Or properties and values. In this case.
So.
This was the easiest for me to prepare for writing test around. Because I don't know how to use auto fixture or bogus and auto bogus.
Well, no one, apparently, I would bet President Not Sure's library was way more used because we found Autobogus and it's one of those libraries that has like 5 users. Let's see how many stars. Is it going to be under 50?
441.
Okay, okay. Yeah. Yeah, scroll down to a example of it. Oh, gross.
Yeah.
Person faker. There. So
this would be where I would be spending a lot more time reading the documentation than I would just copying and pasting a CSV. And saying,
yeah,
use this.
Honestly, it was my teammate who preferred this, not me. But like, yeah, it's kind of a literal skill issue thing where I don't like it, but once I master it, maybe I will like it. All right, he's linked auto fixture. How many stars? 3.3K. Incredible.
I didn't see that. Dang. Yeah, this looks like something more of what I would have wanted, but yeah, because I would just have 2 class. No, I would only have 1 class still. So yeah, why not?
Fixture.create, and then the fact that it's an int, it's almost too simple because who's ever gonna do that? But whatever, maybe they would. Oh, you actually did use bogus, Fod. Then having a helper, but Fod, you or me. We are enlightened.
I think we found your
You are the chosen one.
current
He is,
self.
because he agrees with me. He does the things I do.
And talks
So-
like you with the whole, if you're not doing it the way I'm doing it, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, then you're wrong. But seriously, and your stuff is pretty stable. So you've got failing tests right now.
I do. 2 of them.
And you can make them pass by writing the code. And then, of course, you're going to have to go back to the UI and make that also work.
But you see this? This is what I'm talking about.
But
The
it's
failure
good.
for this test is that the lab sample ID column didn't exist in my field mappings or something, one of them.
That is kind of weird.
So part of my test is failing. That isn't even the act.
Maybe, I don't know, man. Anyway, but so it's failing for the wrong reason. But what the other one looks correct. The
The other one is
other
failing in the
test
right
failure.
spot. And I'm doing not the same thing. I'm getting the first. I'm just curious to know what this is. Actually, you know what? We don't even need to do that. Yeah, do you have any more questions on that, TBD, or a direction that you were trying to go? Because I do like the interface idea for the object that gets passed into these methods.
I mean, I was just exploring the use case more for just to discuss it. I get why you're doing what you're doing. It just looks like that is the interface that you are going to pass the data in, and so it looks like to me that's more.
As in an object of that, maybe.
I'm a big fan of mocks. I like mocks, but I'm not. But in some cases unit testing, in some cases you kind of integration testing because you're making several actions combine, etc.
Right. Yeah. So I think I'm hoping that all of my individual value transformation tests, aka the calculate, operation, interpolate, map, regex, and substring, that those are all unit tests on the one method apply for that specific operation. Here's my in, here's the details for it, and here's that expected.
Was showing Mojo, a library I worked on. I wrote, I think I've shown it on stream a few times, roast potato as I called it. And it was basically kind of creating a simple query language against entity data sources. I was trying to build it as a reporting tool so people could write their own queries, but I was reviewing my test there because the code is, the last time I touched the code was 12 years ago, and
oh, I'm sure it looked great. By the way, I gotta go. It's time that we need to wrap up anyway soon.
Okay. Well, I'll let you do your stand-up, but I want to hear TBD's story.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to go. I gotta go.
Okay.
And I will nudge y'all to wrap it up. But so anyway, this week I'm about to check in a commit that reformats the whole code base, and I'm about to get this pull request reviewed. And once that happens, the game is afoot.
You didn't even know blockers. All right, DVD, if you could, please finish your story because it was a good story.
What was it? Oh, so roast potato. I was writing that because I wanted to build a reporting thing. So your tool reminded me, the ETL thing as well reminded me of that. So I wrote this thing to use in the work project. So it basically allowed me to say, okay, well, if the name is like this and the values in this collection and the date is and this other field is within this thing, it would actually build an expression. So it builds a full expression tree in .NET out there. But I was reviewing it and I was looking back at how I did the tests, and the tests are kind of rough. They're just taking the strings and it's all just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. So the unit tests were a little lacking. But looking back on 12-year-old code, it was like, okay, I did a lot of things I didn't think I'd done in there. The project I was building it personally with the intent of saying, one of those, hey, look what I did. Look how amazing this facility is. Right as Salesforce, because it was putting it into a CRM I was building, and Salesforce launched, and our company decided to take on Salesforce and scrap the stuff I've been doing for the last year. So they never got the benefit of seeing my awesome dynamic query.
Would be the best feeling in the world.
They wanted to do like reporting and stuff. So I'm considering resurrecting it and using Sprake to kind of pass the strings.
Oh right, you were saying that. Yeah.
The other day, and pulling those strings apart and using this it's very reminiscent. But it'd be cool to be able to say, I want to use for an ETL pipeline. I want to transfer from A to B. I want to transfer from this database in Liquid Sky to this other data source. Here's the the natural language string that I can apply to the collection, and it'll transform the collection.
Right. Yeah, that sounds amazing. That would be really cool to be able to do here. Yeah, especially since, well, I mean, like, the cool thing is that the users of these apps are like scientists and big brain people. So I'm sure they could understand the syntax if they had to use syntax, but I'd rather give them something that just does it all for them. But I was thinking of doing it that way where while I was creating all of the transformation rules, I was giving them this static, what are these called? Extension methods for that specific rule, and that's how you apply it, so that I could just do a chain of dot this rule dot this next rule dot this next rule, and that would get parsed and evaluated by a script evaluator as C#, and then it just runs it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up just going with I'll parse it myself, apply it myself.
Yeah. So am I. I love this sort of stuff. So it's fun.
But yeah, so like Peter said, we are nearing the end of our community day time. So as you know, towards the end, I like to do stand up. So if you guys are okay with that, we'll go ahead and do that.
No problem.
All right, we'll start with TBD.
Yep. So this week we got Liquid Sky to a good point. So I've been working on trying to get the Palumi thing working. Blockers, bots, but nothing that can't be solved by me reading the manual. So going into next week, I'll be continuing on that effort and trying to get Liquid Sky deployed. That was me.
All right. Then DFlux. I was looking for this.
So right now I'm working on getting a new job. My blockers are the entire industry because they haven't hired me yet. But no, right? Yeah, I'm working on getting a new job. So in between right now, and looking for Blazor work. So lots of interesting stuff. There's lots of really cool stuff out there. So been working on that, but we'll see how that goes. You'll find out in a week.
Keep us surprised. Anything else?
Working on some cool little thing, some integration with some investment app thing, which is just a side project, and sort of just playing around with different offline storage in Blazor WebAssembler, which is also very interesting. To try a couple new things, but not having much luck, but we'll get there eventually.
And for me, I have been working on writing tests for this new rule that I need to implement, and hopefully be able to get that done so that we can have the last part of the puzzle for transforming an input file to an output class. And it's going to be great. I'm going to do that today. So I will go ahead and restart the stream after a short break after we're done here and finish off the test and hopefully implement the thingy itself. So no blockers at the moment, other than I probably should have taken a different approach with the tests. And I need to do
You know what you don't know after you figure that out. So
yeah.
you know, that's what we do.
Exactly. Well, thank you both, and Peter, of course, for hanging out with us, having conversations, and just being amazing. Do you have any last words that you would like to say to everyone before we end Community Day?
Oh, well then, have a great weekend, all. Thank you very much. See you again soon.
And I say I greatly appreciate people that put .NET content out there. So obviously, everyone here, you should be following One Online. If you're not, hit the follow button.
And TBD.
And if you do want to check out another .NET streamer that also does amazing cool things, TBD streams. I'm the only person that has doesn't stream yet has the word streamer in my name. So check out TBD as well, and appreciate you One Online for always putting such a great show on and teaching me wonderful things.
Quite welcome.
Always.
I love it when
if I
Stream
get up,
Elements does this.
and if I got up early enough, I'd say the same thing to TBD. But I'm often quite not so good at that.
It's 7 o'clock your time too, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So maybe if I'm smart and wise, I'll be checking out TBD's stream very shortly, since I have no excuse now.
All right. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was saying bye. Take care. Good.
Yes.
Good weekend.
Enjoy. Awesome. So that was TBD, DFlux, and Peter. Amazing, amazing members of our community. And we are members of TBD's community as well. I'm going to this screen. As I mentioned, I will start the stream back up after a short break, probably a 15, 20, who knows, some short break. So definitely hang out where you feel like hanging out. All of the people that I was lurking on, except for Emporium Guy, have stopped their streams, have ended their what are words anyway. But yeah, I'm not going to raid out because I will be back in just a short bit, but I am going to stop the video so that, or stop the stream so that I can do the thing. Yeah, Andreas Sastav, she is an amazing developer. Definitely check out her streams. They are fantastic, super smart, super cool, super laid back. Shout out for Emporium Guy, who is currently streaming. So if you aren't already lurking on another stream and you have the availability to, definitely check out Emporium Guy. Okay, that's it for now. Ciao. I'm gonna take a quick break and I'll be back.